Hiya folks, how you all doing? Will here once again, back for another fight card prediction. We're going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night 85 from Brisbane, Australia, as the heavyweights take centre stage, as the Super Samoan Mark Hunt faces off against Frank Mir. First of all, if you haven't already, could you please subscribe to my channel? I'm trying to get my numbers up a little bit. If you haven't already, if you could subscribe or even share or tell others, I would greatly appreciate that. As always, there is a band of brothers down below who you should go follow, watch their fight card predictions, watch their interviews and listen to their podcasts. They will be down the drop down box, as well as my fight picks. There is timestamps on there for when you want to go to a certain fight if needs be. My most confident picks will be there, and I will also put my DraftKings picks at the bottom as well there. Overall, the card's okay. Not too many big names on there, but the Aussie cards always deliver. And I'm looking forward to watching this late next Saturday night, early Sunday morning. We're going to start. First fight, in fact, I'll get out there. There's a couple of fights that got changed about. Ben the win against Justin Scoggins. Scoggins got injured. They pulled Ben the win from this card for some reason. I was looking forward to that fight. Abel Trujillo pulled out with visa issues. Charles Laprise has moved up to face Ross Pearson, and Alain Patrick will have an opponent. We just need to wait and find out. But let's start off with these fights. In the women's bantamweight division, we have Leslie Smith against Rin Nakai. Now, Leslie Smith, 7-6-1 record. Seen her a long time ago in Invicta. Is always up for a scrap. A fight with Sarah Kaufman is a fun fight to watch if you haven't seen that. I think it was actually our first one in Invicta. We haven't seen her a little bit in about a year and a half. Last time we seen her was at UFC 1. It was in Houston. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was against Jessica Ai. She was actually doing okay in that fight as well. She was very game. She was hurting. She was trading with Jessica Ai, hitting her with some big shots, but her ear got busted, and you remember it nearly come off. It was kind of flapping about there. That was the last time we seen her. Pretty gruesome looking injury, but she's a tough girl. She kind of reminds me of a female Diaz brother, but not as good as what the Diaz brothers are. She has got a huge height and reach advantage over Rin Nakai here. I think she's got about 8 inches of height with 6 inches of reach, which she should really try and use that to her advantage, but I don't think she's kind of smart enough to really do that, if you know what I'm saying. Rin Nakai, on the other hand, her first fight in the UFC. It's actually interesting to see when this fight got put together, because I seen reports that Rin Nakai had totally blew her knee out and was thinking about retirement. 2 weeks later, she's got a fight confirmed, so it must have been a little bit of BS out there somewhere. Her fight in the UFC, a debut fight, was in Japan against the now champion Miesha Tate. What she showed in that fight is that she's tough. She can take some shots, because Tate did hit her with some big shots. Very aggressive to the takedown, and once she gets you to the ground, I think against people that are not the elite grapplers or decent in any type of way of grappling, she will keep them down there and pound on them. And I think that's where she wins this fight here as well against Leslie Smith. I think it's a close fight, but the way I see this fight for Nakai going is that the aggressiveness of Leslie Smith will come forward, and I can see Rin Nakai just level changing, going for a single leg. She's got a powerful double in there, double leg takedown, which she uses to her advantage. If she gets you against the cage, you're in deep trouble as well. So that's where I see this fight running for Rin Nakai. That's why I'm picking her via a unanimous decision. I just think the takedown's going to be there when Smith is too aggressive. So Rin Nakai via UD for me there. The main event of the Fight Pass prelims, as I mentioned, was Ross Pearson against Charles Laprise. Just seen this fight on Twitter that Ross Pearson says let's not cut weight for this fight, which was a little bit of a weird one. Laprise came back, yeah, let's do that, It'd be interesting to see if the UFC let them do that. Ross Pearson, a guy, I'm kind of all over the place with picks on Ross Pearson, because last time I actually think I picked Ross Pearson against Francisco Trinaldo, and Trinaldo just looked like a bigger guy that night, a little bit faster, had a couple of slams, nice takedowns in that fight, and just kind of bullied Ross Pearson a little bit and got the decision victory. Charles Laprise, on the other hand, he's coming off his loss to Francisco Trinaldo last summer. And this is a big fight for him, fighting Ross Pearson here. A kind of name guy, he's been around the UFC for a long time, but an opportunity for him nonetheless to win. He's got some crisp techniques on the feet. Coming out of TriStar, you know you're always going to get that with those guys. he had wins over Brian Barberena, which was a really fun fight. He did get outstruck in that fight. Maybe a little bit of hometown decision, if I remember correctly. I like Ross Pearson. I can't remember where he's been training at for this fight. If he's been at Alliance, I really like him a lot, because I think when he trains there, that's when you see the best Ross Pearson, i.e. Paul Felder. I'm going to go Ross Pearson. I think he can knock out Charles Laprise. Laprise got found out against Ronaldo, and I think if Pearson can be aggressive and stay in his face, he can knock him out. So I'm going to go Ross Pearson, 3rd round TKO. Moving on into the Fox Sports 1 card, I think Alain Patrick will probably fight in this one, on this, probably the first fight of the televised event here. So I'm just going to go, I'll put Patrick's opponent down in drop down box when that gets confirmed, but it's Richie Walsh against Viscardi Andrade. Richie Walsh, I don't think he's an awfully great fighter in the UFC, and we've seen that in the Ultimate Fighter, the tough smashes or the tough nations, that's what it was, against Canada. I don't really rate this guy as too much as a fighter. Coming off a win at UFC 193 against Steve Kennedy, who I thought was terrible, was eating shots. But what Richie Walsh likes to do is he likes to kind of make it a dogfight. The Aussie fighters are always fighters that love a scrap. They come forward, in your face, put you against the cage and just want to throw some bombs. I think he needs to be a bit smarter if he's got any chance of winning this fight, because he does leave his chin in there, and he is, sometimes he can get hit when that chin is in there. Alan Jouban, especially if he wants to put the fight against the cage. Jouban turned around and just unloaded some elbows and just took him out. Viscardi Andrade, coming off a win over Ghassan Umalatov, totally outstruck Umalatov, stopped the takedowns. Very dangerous guys when he goes down there as well. He's got a lot of meat to him, so he's hard to get down there. He's got some good takedown defense. The way I see this fight going is just Andrade. I just think he's better everywhere. I think he can stop the takedown. I think he can hurt Richie Walsh on the feet. But you can never count out these fighters when they're fighting on home soil. And that's what's kind of thrown me off with a few fights on this card. But I will go with Viscardi Andrade. I think he can stop this fight as well. I think he might submit Richie Walsh. So I'm going to go a 2nd round submission for Viscardi Andrade. Featherweight division. Fun fight. Dan Hooker against Mark Eddiva. Dan Hooker doesn't really have too much kind of skills, but what he does have is he has a huge heart, and he has a lot of grit, a lot of determination, and he doesn't quit. He comes forward and he looks to put on a fight and a scrap and a brawl. He's faced some really tough opposition in the UFC. I mean, he's coming off that loss to Yair Rodriguez, where he just got completely outclassed in that one back in Houston, but never gave up and was always in the fight, and that's something you have to commend the guy on, because if you've got that fighting spirit, you're always going to be in the fight and you can always win the fight. So I think this is a good matchup for him. Mark Eddiva, we've seen him, he beat Turshon, Kevin Souza, he lost to, but he's always in a scrap and he's always a dangerous guy on his feet as well. I think this is just going to be this could be one of the best fights of the night, because I think it's going to be back and forward. I think Eddiva has a chance, but against the kind of lower opposition that like your Entwistles, I picked Entwistle to annihilate Hooker and that didn't come out great, but against your kind of lower guys, I think Dan Hooker can look really good. I fully expect him to do that here. Do I see him finishing Eddiva? I think Eddiva's he's a great fighter himself. He's a tough guy to put away, so I'm going to go Dan Hooker via decision. The main event of the Fox Sports Prelim 1 card, we have Brendan O'Reilly against Alan Jouban. Like this fight a lot for Alan Jouban. Alan Jouban doesn't lose to bad guys in the UFC. I mean, his 2 losses are to Varley Alves and Albert Tumanov. 2 hot prospects in that welterweight division. He has wins over Seth Baczynski, Richie Walsh, and Matt Dwyer, if I remember right. That was a back and forth one where I think he actually got dropped in that fight and showed a lot of heart coming back in that one. I feel he's decent all around. His takedown defense isn't great. He has submissions there. His defense in that has shored up a lot over the last few years. He did get submitted back by my man Biggie Rhodes back in the day, and he has shored that up a little bit. His wrestling's a little bit better than what it was, but his main point of attack is definitely his striking. Pretty light on his feet, likes to throw a nice inside and outside leg kick, and will go at the body if needs be as well. I mentioned that TKO victory, the KO victory, elbow and punches. against Richie Walsh at UFC 184 back in Los Angeles last year. He looked phenomenal in that fight, kind of reversed the position and just unloaded. But against Tumenov, he got into a little bit of a kind of firefight, and the technical striking, the ultimate technical prowess of Albert Tumenov paid dividends in that fight, and he got knocked out. But I like him in this fight because I don't think Brendan O'Reilly is an awfully good fighter. But once again, he's a guy who has a lot of heart and he comes forward. Last time out against Bec Rawlings, I think Rawlings was kind of piecing him up in the feet a little bit, hurting him there. Smart fighter, took the fight to the ground, passed the guard a few times, looked for the submissions. Rawlings is just a tough guy to finish. Very durable guy. But O'Reilly doesn't offer much in the feet. I don't think he has enough in the feet to really trouble Jouban. This is why I think Jouban, we might see some kind of fancy stuff from this guy in this fight. And this is why I think we might see a knockout in this fight, because Jouban, being very aggressive, can possibly, if we fight smart, can finish this fight very early. I'm going to go with a first round TKO victory for Alan Jouban. I think he's going to catch him with something. So my pick's going to be Alan Jouban via TKO. Moving on to the main card, the first fight on here, we have Rowdy Bec Rawlings against Hamderly Silva, Seohee Ham. I'm actually really looking forward to this fight because I think it will be scrappy. What we've seen from Seohee Ham in the UFC is just she stands in the pocket and she throws leather. She did that against Joanne Calderwood. She did that against Courtney Casey. Coming out on a losing end against Joanne Calderwood, took some massive shots. I remember the front kick to the face in round number 3 in that one, but was still there. She's a tough little bitch, and she does not go anywhere. Courtney Casey got a beautiful victory down there. That was a scrap. That was another fun fight to watch. I think it was actually Fight of the Night, if I remember right, too. Bec Rawlings, she had a win over Lisa Ellis. I don't read too much into that because Lisa Ellis has shown that she needs to get herself out of the fight game. I think she went soft after she had her kid, unfortunately. So, how do I see this fight going? Close fight. It's going to go a decision. I don't see a finish. If anywhere I see a finish, it's going to be on Rawlings' side, maybe with a submission game. But Seohee Ham has a good takedown defense, and will probably keep the fight on feet for most of it. And I think she's got the advantage over that. Rawlings will be aggressive. She is the shorter fighter, so she has to kind of keep her distance a little bit, in and out. Try and maybe hit the leg kick. She does. I was watching her fights in Japan before that this week, and she uses that a lot. I looked at the odds. Seohee Ham is the underdog. Very close fight, and I said, I think from my first video this year, that I will pick the dog in this one. I want to pick Bec Rawlings, but I think Seohee Ham is just a tougher fighter. I think she will just always be there throughout the fight, so my pick will be Seohee Ham via decision, a split decision. In Australia, that might not go down too well. It might actually go the other way, even though Ham maybe clearly wins the fight. Rawlings might get the hometown decision, but I like Ham. I'm more confident picking Seohee Ham. Middleweight division, we have the returning James Te-Huna against Steve Bosse. Not sure what to really think about this fight. James Te-Huna, he's coming off 3 losses. He has lost to a couple of good guys. I mean, Glover Teixeira submitted him in the first round. He got sparked out by Shogun Rua, and then he lost last time, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, 20 months, against Nate Marquardt in New Zealand, where I expect him to really... Nate Marquardt is a guy who is there for the taking, and he never took his opportunity, and he got put to sleep himself. Steve Bosse, on the other hand, he just looked shook in his UFC debut against Thiago Marata Santos and got absolutely smashed with a head kick. It's the best way to really kind of explain that. He's a guy who, I think he played hockey years ago, a brawler, but he needs to get off some shots because he didn't get anything off against Thiago Santos, and we've seen how that ended up. Te-Huna, this is a big fight it's actually a big fight for both these guys, because Te-Huna he's been around a long time, he's fought in the UFC a long time. 3 losses are usually not kept around too much. He loses this fight, he's definitely not getting kept around. I think Steve Bosse has a big chance in this one. But I think if he doesn't do it early, I think Te-Huna's a good boxer himself. When he wants to use when he's smart, again, if he's fighting smart, he's a good fighter to watch because he's aggressive. His defense, when he gets into a brawl, his defense goes out the window, and it's just, there's nothing there. And I don't think his chin's that great, but when he uses his head, his defense is actually pretty good. And I mean, I think his last win was like 3 years ago against Ryan Jimmel. I mean, that's a long time without a win in this sport. I think Steve Bosse isn't a bad pick as an underdog in this card. I really don't, but I feel more confident in picking James Te-Huna. I just think his overall game is better, and he will take the fight to the ground. Possibly. See, I'm a little bit in the air with this fight, but I like James Te-Huna via, I can see a submission or a TKO victory if it hits the ground. So I'm going to go James Te-Huna via TKO in a second, but would not be surprised if I see a lot of people in Toutmaster, the competition I'm in, picking Steve Bosse, because I think it's a legit pick as well. Middleweight, Dan Kelly against Antonio Carlos Jr. I see this as only a clear win for Carlos Jr., but he said that against Kevin Casey, and he managed to stick freaking fingers in Kevin Casey's eye and lose that fight. That fight got stopped, and it ended up there. So Dan Kelly, a judoka. Antonio Carlos Jr., he won the Ultimate Fighter, I believe. He was a heavyweight, came down to a light heavyweight. Now he's down at middleweight. So a big guy, huge frame. Improving striking we've seen in his fights. Maybe not so much his last one, but he has been improving. I think he fights at American Top Team now, so his improvements, you can clearly see them coming together. If Dan Kelly, he has got some power, but I can see this fight being won at range a little bit from Carlos Jr. If he can do that, be fighting, kind of tire Dan Kelly out and take him down, I think he's got the jiu-jitsu skills to really stop this fight, hurt Dan Kelly. But yet again, I think I wrote Dan Kelly off in his last fight, and he came through and won as well. I like Carlos Jr. pretty big. He's one of my most confident picks in this entire card. Antonio Carlos Jr. for me via submission. Maybe late first, early second round. I'll maybe go late first round, sorry. So Carlos Jr. submission, first round for me. Lightweight division, we have Jake Matthews against Johnny Case. Interesting fight. Jake Matthews, a raw prospect. We've seen this guy on the Tough Nations show a few years ago. Since then, he's come in, he's been a fairly exciting fighter. Last time out against, who was he against last time? I can't remember. Akbar Areola. He won that fight via a doctor stoppage, I think, the end of the second round. But he got lit up in that first round, and that just shows his inexperience as a fighter against a guy who has a lot of experience, and used that to his advantage. He has another couple of UFC wins against Wagner Hosha and Deshaun Johnson. He won those both by submission. I thought that the stoppage over Hosha was a good one, considering Hosha is a black belt and has won jiu-jitsu tournaments out there. Deshaun Johnson was a boxer, didn't have a ground game, fought smart there, took the fight to the ground. His only loss in the UFC was to James Vick, who is a legit prospect at 155. He had that high elbow guillotine, he just couldn't get out, tapped out, no shame in that. Johnny Case, I think he's 4-0 in the UFC, came through a bit of a tough fight last time against Jean Cabral down in Brazil, but he got the victory nonetheless. Now, I was on the Johnny Case, I thought he was a decent fighter, but when you look at the people that he's beat, I mean, Takadomi, tough fighter, Japanese fighters are always tough. Perez, I think it was kind of close to retiring around that time, he must have been thinking about it. Francisco Trevino, the guy who we've seen he's not in the UFC anymore, that wasn't really too much, his grappling won that fight, and he was against it early against Jean Cabral and came through. But in this fight, I will be going with the underdog, who is Jake Matthews. I think that he's coming into his own a little bit more. I think, if I remember right reading, he trained a little bit at TriStar for this camp. So that is the legit place to go. If you're looking to cement your skills and improve your skills in MMA, TriStar is one of the best gyms in the world to do that. I think he was there for 10 days, I remember right. Not a long time, but I'm sure he learned a lot. I just feel pretty confident in Jake Matthews in this one. I think he's going to upset Johnny Case. I mean, Johnny Case I think he bought his own MMA promotion, and he's kind of been looking into that a lot. A lot of time I've seen a lot of his social media posts going on about that, so that might take his head away from the fight. I could be wrong, but I think Jake Matthews in this fight, I think he's going to upset the apple cart a little bit and get the victory here. I've thought that since the matchup was made, so I'm going to stick by my original gut feeling in this one. I'm going to go with Jake Matthews. Johnny Case, good fighter, but I think this could be a good victory for Jake Matthews here. I think I think he's the shorter fighter in this one, but he can keep it at distance a little bit, try and curtail his aggressiveness, and when the time is right, take this fight to the ground and just try and stay away from Case, because Case is dangerous on the feet, he's dangerous down the ground, but I just think he's going to grind this one out, I really do. So I'm going to go decision victory for Jake Matthews. Co-main event of the evening, we've got Neil Magny against the returning Hector Lombard. Wow, right, let's get into this fight. Neil Magny is a guy who, I think he just surprises a lot of people. I forever pick against Neil Magny and he forever proves me wrong. Fights out of Elevation Fight Team. He came out against, I think, was it Kelvin Gastelum, his last win in the UFC it was. And I fully expected Kelvin Gastelum to really come away with that victory, but he looked fantastic. Used that long range, that jab of his, weathered the storm, and then got the decision victory there. It could have easily went to Kelvin Gastelum, but he got the decision victory. I mean, he's won a lot of fights at welterweight as well. I think since he's lost to Damian Maia, he's 3-0 since then, or maybe 2-0, sorry, with wins over Eric Silva, which was a close one. I think if Silva, well, I'm not even going to talk about Eric Silva. We've seen what we've seen at UFC 196. Wins over Hyung Yu Lim, which was a really tough win down over there in Manila, and he got the stoppage against a very dangerous opponent there. That's what he needs to do. He needs to keep this fight at distance, keep his back off the cage, and stay away from the clinch of Hector Lombard, because Lombard will put him on the ground, and he's very top heavy down there. And we've seen that Magny's probably his worst area is probably his overall wrestling and grappling, which has definitely got a lot better, but we've seen against Damian Maia, he got outclassed, but that can happen to anybody against Damian Maia. Hector Lombard coming off that win, which turned to a no contest against Josh Buckman. He will be the shorter fighter by a long way. He's got like a 9-inch reach advantage to overcome in this fight. But I don't know whether I should go with Neil Magny in this one. I was thinking about it, but I think Hector Lombard is just the more aggressive fighter. I think if he can pin Magny against the cage, he really needs to unload more. I don't think he unloaded a lot against Josh Buckman in that last fight, and he could have finished that fight in my opinion, and he didn't do it. So I don't know whether it's because he's getting older, he's just a little bit more cautious, but I think he needs to go for these victories a little bit more. I usually don't pick fighters who are kind of cheats a little bit. I think Hector Lombard has got a little bit about that about him, but I am going to pick Hector Lombard, and I was a little bit surprised to see that he's actually the underdog for this one, so I'm going to pick Hector Lombard probably across a lot of different things. I think he's got the opportunity of a finish too if he can get it to the ground. My pick will be Hector Lombard, but I think Magny's got enough to keep him in this fight, so it's going to be decision victory for Hector Lombard. And the main event of the evening, in the heavyweight division, we have this Super Samoan Mark Hunt against Frank Mir. Interesting fight. I'm seeing a lot of people write Frank Mir off, and I don't think people should write Frank Mir off because people have did that before and it's come back and bit them in the ass. Frank Mir, let's get into it. A jiu-jitsu whiz. If this guy gets you down there, you're in trouble, but he does have some solid stand-up as well. It's something that's came along over the years. It's got better as the years have gone by, and occasionally we see that. We've seen that against Todd Duffy. Duffy was the more reckless striker, and the more crisp boxing of Mir showed in the end with that knockout. His last fight against Andre Arlovski, I gave that to Frank Mir. I thought he should have won that fight personally. The judges saw otherwise. It was a close fight. I can see why they did that, but I picked Frank Mir to win that fight after I watched it, and it went against him. But he is a fighter who I've always loved watching Frank Mir fight, because I think that you just never know. He could be snapping limbs very, very easily in fights. We've seen that against Minotauro way back in the day. Got kind of pushed against the fence a lot against Andre Arlovski last time out, and that probably kind of seen why the more dominance for the Andre Arlovski, why he got the decision. I think if he can, another one, fighting smart, he knows how he wants to win this fight, and it's probably not going to be standing up. He's got a clear advantage if this goes to the ground. We've seen that Hunt has made changes. I mean, back in the day, Mark Hunt used to get taken down so easy, and first attempt on a submission, he was tapping out. But now we've seen improved defenses kind of everywhere. We've seen against Stipe Miocic, he just got overrun in that fight against a tough, one of the best fighters in that heavyweight division, who is just all around a great fighter, who is fighting for the title next at UFC 198. What are Mark Hunt's strengths? Obviously an elite striker, walk-off knockouts on his resume everywhere. you don't want to stand and trade with this guy. Some people have been recently. More people have been more successful with that. I mean, Fabrizio Verdum was more successful. We've seen Junior Dos Santos was more successful. Both taking him out with via strikes. Coming off a win over Antonio Silva, that's saying nothing because Antonio Silva he is done. How do I see this fight going? I think Hunt can most definitely knock out Frank Mir, but I think Mark Hunt is kind of on his way out, and I think he hasn't trained at AK Thailand. He's been training, I think, with John Wayne Parr's gym over there in Australia. My pick is going to be Frank Mir. I think he's going to weather the storm. And he's going to find a way to get this fight to the ground, and I think he will finish this fight inside 2 rounds. I was fairly confident in Mark Hunt before I watched the Stipe fight again, and before I watched some of his fights beforehand. I just feel confident in Frank Mir. I think he's still a fighter who can beat a lot of heavyweights, top rank heavyweights as well. So my pick is going to be the underdog, and it's going to be Frank Mir. And I think he's going to finish this fight via submission, via a Kimura, an armbar. I think it could be one of those ones, or it could be a rear naked choke once he gets the back. I just think he's going to get the fight to the ground and will win the fight. So how many people are picking Frank Mir, I don't know, but I think he's a legit underdog in this one, and I will probably bet Frank Mir. I probably should stop betting because my betting for this year, my picks wise has been decent, but my betting wise has been pretty terrible. But I will pick Frank Mir via submission in the second round. Okay, that's my picks for UFC Fight Night 85. My picks for UFC Fight Night 86 from Zagreb, Rothwell v Dos Santos will be out probably in a week or so, week to 10 days. It's another couple of weeks till that fight card's out, and then UFC 197, UFC on Fox. So that's my picks here. Please comment and subscribe, like I said at the start of the video. I would appreciate if I could get my numbers up a little bit more. Please tell me your picks for this fight card. The last few cards have been fantastic with your comments coming and telling me who do you think will win this fight. I'm also looking at putting a little bit extra content out on a Monday called the Monday Matchmaking, which I'm going to look and try and put potential people up after an event. It's something I like doing via Twitter, so I might do a 10-15 minute video on here of that. Come follow me on Twitter, WillMartin7MMA. Follow the bad guys down below me here who put out great content. And I will see you very, very soon for UFC Zagreb. Until the fights come round, take care and all the best.